Dear students, today's topic is Introduction to Joints or Arthrology. For convenience of description and understanding, this topic is divided into several components. Today we will be discussing about the definition of a joint, classification of joints with examples. So today we will be discussing about the definition of a joint, classification of different types of joints with examples. We are seeing a picture showing the two bones and their articulation. So let us define joint. A joint or articulation is a connection or a junction or a device between two or more bones to permit movement. So the purpose of a joint is to permit a movement. So what is joint? It's an articulation or connection or junction or a device between two or more bones to permit movement. What you are seeing in this picture is what joint? It is a shoulder joint. Let us answer for a question. How many bones are there in the body? There are 206 bones in the body. All these 206 bones of the body are connected to at least one other bone, except. So, what is that bone which is not connected to other bone? Is it vertebra? Is it sternum? Is it ear ossicles? Is it hyoid bone? Which is the correct answer? Let us see. So, you are seeing the skull, the mandible, the vertebral column, and you are seeing something marked in red. What is it? All the 206 bones of the body are connected to at least one other bone except the hyoid bone. This is the hyoid bone. Where is it placed and what is this hyoid bone? It's a U-shaped bone. It's a U-shaped bone having a convex surface and a concave surface. So where is it located? It is located in the anterior part of the neck. How is it held in position? We are saying that it is not connected to any other bone. How it is held in position? So when there is no joint, how it is kept in position? So it's kept in position because of the muscles and ligaments. So it provides muscles to the floor of the mouth, and then the tongue it is providing, and to the larynx it is providing, and some muscles to the pharynx it is giving attachment. So it is held in position by the muscles and ligaments. Now you understood why the hyoid bone is exceptional in not having or in not forming a joint. Now let us go to the topic. arthrology or joints. So joints are otherwise known as arthros. So the term arthrology, where from it is derived, you have to understand. And similarly, there is another term called syndesmology. So both these terms are derived from Greek. So let us see. Arthrology. It's derived from the Greek word arthron, which means a joint. And there is articulation, the term we have used. Where from it has come? It has come from Latin, in which articulatio means a joint. Then we have used the term junction. What is this juncture? It's from Latin and it also means a joint. Then syndesmology. This is also derived from Greek syndesmo, meaning fastening or joining. Syndesmos means a ligament. So syndesmos means a ligament. Syndesmo is fastening or joining the bones in this case. We have to use it. So by ligaments. That's why it's also known as syndesmology, arthrology, joints, articulatio, juncture. All means the same. Now, what are the movements of a joint? Here you are seeing the skull bone, and which consists of number of bones joined by sutures. You know what is a sagittal suture, coronal suture, squamous suture, and lambdoid suture. And these are the two vertebrae, the bodies of vertebra, which are joined by intervertebral discs. Then here you are seeing the hip joint formed between the head of femur and the acetabulum of the hip bone. And let us see what are the movements of a joint. There are some joints. So there are some joints where there is no movement, and there are some joints where there is slight movement, and there are some joints where there is great freedom of movement. Let us see what is it without a movement. So there will be just mere bonds of union between different bones. That's what you are seeing in these sutures. So joints of skulls are the one where there is no movement, where these joints are called sutures. Then there are some places where there will be slight movement. If you observe the vertebral bodies between which there is the intervertebral discs. So in this vertebral column there is slight movement. Then there are certain joints where there will be great freedom of movement. So the examples are the shoulder joint and the hip joint, where there will be great freedom of movement. And if you see the number of joints, they are more in children than in the adults. Why there are more joints in children than in the adults? As growth is proceeding, some of the bones in the children, they fuse together. You are seeing the X-ray of skeleton of a child, newborn. And here you can see there are certain areas where the number of bones are more. Let us see the examples. There are two frontal bones. in the children. As they grow, these two halves of frontal bone, they will fuse and form the single frontal bone. Similarly, there are two halves of the mandible that will fuse and form the single mandible. Coming to the pelvic bones, there are three bones, separate bones: the ilium, ischium, and pubis. As age advances, these three will fuse and form the single pelvic bone. And if you take the vertebra, there are 5 sacral vertebrae and 4 coccygeal vertebrae. In the adult, these 5 sacral vertebrae fuse and form the single sacrum. Similarly, the 4 coccygeal vertebrae fuse and form the coccyx. So, now you know the explanation for more number of bones in children when compared to adult. What are the articulating parts in different bones? And you know the classification of bones. The long bones. The ends of long bones are the articulating parts. So here you are seeing the long bone humerus, the ulna, and radius. So the ends of these bones are taking part in forming the joint. Regarding the flat bones, which is the articulating part? For this, you see the example of the sternum, which has got the manubrium, body, and xiphoid process. So the margins of the sternum is articulating with the other bones. For example, here it is articulating with the clavicle and with the first rib, second rib, so on and so forth. That's how the flat bones, the margins will form the articulating parts. Coming to the short or irregular bones. So they will be articulated at the articular surfaces. And let us see the vertebral bodies. So in between the bodies of the vertebra, what you are seeing is the intervertebral discs. So the articular surfaces are the places where you can see in relation with the vertebral column. So the intervertebral discs, in relation with which the articular surfaces of bodies of vertebra are joined. Now let us come to the classification of joints and what is the basis for the classification of joints. So the joints can be classified based on their structure. That is, depending on the material that is binding the articular surfaces and presence or absence of a joint cavity. Then the regional, depending on the location of the bone, they can be classified. The functional, depending on the range of movement, the joints can be classified. And a combined classification where combination of structure and function are taken into consideration for classification. Now let us see this flowchart of broad classification of joints. One is the structural, depending on binding material. The other is the regional, depending on the location. Then functional, depending on the range of movement. So each of it is again classified. The structural is classified into fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints, and synovial joints. In the regional classification, it is further divided into skull type, vertebral type, and limb type. And in the functional classification, it is divided into immovable joints, which are known as synarthrosis, slightly movable joints, which are known as amphiarthrosis, freely movable joints, which are known as diarthrosis. So the broad classification of joints based on the structure, region and function, and the subtypes within that you have seen it. Now, if we combine structure and function and classify the joints, so that is the binding material and range of movement will be combined and then classified. Fibrous joints, which is a structural classification. Functionally, it is immobile. So this is known as synarthrosis. Then coming to the cartilaginous joints, that is the binding material is cartilage. And functionally, it is slightly movable and it is known as amphiarthrosis. Then synovial joints, that will be having a joint cavity. Functionally, they are freely movable and they are known as diarthrosis. You can see further classification of these three types of joints. The fibrous joints or synarthrosis are divided into sutures, syndesmosis, gomphosis. So the fibrous joints or synarthrosis are divided into sutures, syndesmosis and gomphosis. Cartilaginous joints or amphiarthrosis are further classified into primary cartilaginous and secondary cartilaginous joints. So there are two types of cartilaginous joints, primary and secondary. Then coming to the synovial joints or diarthrosis. They are divided into, depending on the axis, into plane joints, uniaxial joints, biaxial joints and polyaxial joints. So what we are dealing at present is the broader classifications and further details of each of these fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints and synovial joints. We are going to take that topic separately. Then, now we have a combined classification of joints and subtypes. So we said structural and functional into one group, regional into one group. In the regional, we classified as skull type, vertebral type and limb type. So there are three types. The regional or depending on the location. Skull type, vertebral type and limb type. And you are familiar with this part. Let us revise this part. Structural and functional combined. The synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis and diarthrosis. The synarthrosis divided into sutures, syndesmosis and gomphosis. Cartilaginous into primary and secondary. The diarthrosis into, depending on the axis of movement and shape of articular surface and depending on the number of articulating bones, so they can be classified. So depending on the number of articulating bones, the synovial joints or diarthrosis are classified into simple, complex, compound. And depending on the axis of movement and shape of articular surfaces, the synovial joints can be classified into plane, uniaxial, biaxial and polyaxial depending on the axis. And depending on the shape, the uniaxial is further classified into hinge joint and pivot joint. The biaxial is divided into ellipsoid and condylar joints. The polyaxial joints are divided into saddle and ball and socket variety of joints. Now further revise these joints. So one is the structural classification. It's into fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints and synovial joints. So what will be the features of fibrous joints? The binding material is fibrous tissue. In fibrous joint, there is no joint cavity and it provides stability and no movement. It is protective in function. The examples for fibrous joints is joints between the bones of skull, sutures which we call it. So this is fibrous joint. Regarding cartilaginous joint, the binding material is hyaline cartilage or fibrocartilage. There is no joint cavity. Limited mobility will be seen in these joints. The examples are the intervertebral disc. The other example is the pubic symphysis. What you are seeing is the pubic symphysis between the two pubic bones. Then coming to the synovial joints. Bones are not united directly. Joint cavity will be there, which is lined by membrane and filled with fluid that will lubricate the articulating surfaces, and it is encloses the bones and allows the free or wide range of movement. Cartilage with synovial membrane enclosing a joint cavity will be present. Mobility is greater but stability is less. And synovial joints are the most common joints of the body. Examples for synovial joints are the hip joint, shoulder joint, knee joint, the image of which you are seeing. Okay, this is the images and you are seeing the joint cavity between the articulating bones. Then the other one is the example for synovial joints is the sternoclavicular joints. So this is about the structural classification. Coming to the regional classification, skull type where no mobility but stable. So the fibrous joints are of skull type. Then coming to the vertebral type. Limited mobility but very secure and stable. So this is the vertebral type joints. The example intervertebral disc you have seen. So the cartilaginous joint with is vertebral type. Then coming to the limb type. There will be mobility will be more but not very secure. So synovial joints are of limb type. The functional classification. We have classified into synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis and diarthrosis. No movement, slight movement, free movement. So let us see the features now. Immovable joints and no mobility. Hence they are called synarthrosis. Syn means united. Example is sutures of skull. Then the amphiarthrosis, which are slightly movable joints. There will be some degree of movement will be there. That's why they are called amphi, two-sided arthrosis. Example is intervertebral discs. Then the diarthrosis, which are freely movable joints with maximum degree of mobility. There will be wide range of movement. Examples are the shoulder joint, hip joint and knee joints. Movements are free in the diarthrosis and the participating bones are separated from each other, qualifying the adjective di, that means to arthrosis. Now coming to this combination of structure and function. There is what is known as fibrous and immobile joints or synarthrosis. See here, only the fibrous connective tissue between the two bones. So this is a fibrous joint which is called synarthrosis. Then coming to the cartilaginous and slightly mobile joint, which is known as amphiarthrosis. Between the articulating bones there will be bed of cartilage. So this is the cartilaginous joint or amphiarthrosis. See this picture. The two articulating bones are covered with articular cartilage and separated by joint cavity, which is filled with synovial fluid. So this is the synovial and freely movable joint. It is diarthrosis. So now you know the classification of joints into based on the structure, based on the function, and then based on the region and the combination of structure and function. The further classification of these joints from under each of these categories of fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints and synovial joints will be dealt separately. Hope you have understood the definition, basis for classification and the classification of joints with some examples.